So welcome this evening to the training, and it's great to see you all. For those of you watching this video on YouTube, please would you click the subscribe button right here at the bottom of the screen, and we really appreciate it if you could do some comments and some likes. That helps us with our algorithms. So thanks so much for joining us. Guys on the team, I want to talk for a minute about the market and just put some common sense on what you're hearing out in the marketplace. COVID disaster, COVID collapse, mortgage collapse, real estate depression. You got to understand, a lot of people are making a lot of money on that kind of talk, and I just want to break it down into what's going to happen with us and what is more likely to happen in our local economy, what's more likely to happen in our marketplace. I'm going to just come flat out and say I do not at all think from a rational economic point of view that COVID collapse economically is something that is going to happen in our area here in Southern California. I do not think that is going to happen, and I'm going to give you the reasons why. Now, let's break it down into different pieces. Let's break it down into loans and lending first of all. Of course, and I said this with Justin, if you had $500 in your pocket and a friend came up and said, hey, I want to borrow $500. Oh, by the way, I've been laid off on my job, and there's a law in California, I don't have to give you the money back for a year. Would you lend him the $500? Of course you wouldn't. And that's exactly what's happened. What's happened is that people have been told you can have mortgage forbearance for 12 months. Oh, and they're probably not working. So lenders are saying, wait a minute, before we take on all of the costs, without getting too technical, before we take on all the costs of these loans and servicing these loans and committing to an interest rate on these loans, we want to be sure that A, people are working, and B, that not only that they're working, B, that they have the ability to make the payment, and that they're going to make the payment. So it's very natural that lenders would step back a little bit because government policy changed in a radical way. So there's a step back. Now, what you have to understand is, and this to me has become clear over the 35 years I've been in this country, that there is always a balance between government and business. And whether you like it or not, whether you're one of those people who, breaks windows of banks, let's just follow that scenario through. Let's say you say banks are evil. I see a lot of that on YouTube. Banks are evil. Okay, just follow through the rationale on that. If you say banks are evil and you're going to smash their windows, and banks have got it in for us, and so I'm not going to borrow, I'm not going to buy a house, house prices are going to collapse, I'm not going to do that. You have to then ask yourself, okay, how do you protect your children? How do you protect your wife? You need somewhere to live. Therefore, you're going to rent. So if you rent, somebody has to own that property. You've got two choices. Either one, a private party, an investor, has to own that property. Or two, the government has to own that property. So you then have what's called the projects, or you have government housing. So when I was in Warsaw, right after the Iron Curtain came down, when I was in East Germany, right after the wall came down, remember that? Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall. You could see blocks and blocks and blocks of gray stone buildings stacked, people on top of each other like rabbit hutches. Talk about, you buy egg whites and it says range free. Well, these were not range free human beings. That's what happens if the government takes over. My father ran government housing in England for 34 years. He ran government housing in England. So you go, well, I don't want government housing. I want privately held housing. Well, then you've got to have people who own those houses. And so if you say, I'm going to smash the banks are evil, I'm going to rent, now you rent, and what you're doing is you're boosting capitalism even further because you're promoting that investors have to buy the houses that you rent in because you don't want the government to own them. So what you do is you make the investors more wealthy, you make the divide between the rich and the poor even more, and you boost capitalism thinking that you're rebelling against capitalism. Does that make sense to you? And that's exactly how the financial system works. Now, right now, we have this rearrangement of the relationship between corporations and the government. And the government has made this new ruling that changes it like this. It's a curveball. It says you don't have to pay your payments for 12 months. Now, that's going to be devastating to people. It's going to devastate their credit. They're not going to be able to borrow for 1, 2, 3 years. They're not going to be able to get the cars they wanted. They're not going to be able to get investment properties. And what they're doing is they're sacrificing the possibility of being able to support their children through college later on because the government says you can have forbearance. So the banks now have withdrawn, but now they're going to come back and go, okay, how do we make this work? So let's bring that into nuts and bolts. The low down payment stuff, like your CalHFAs, like your down payment assistance, there's a lot of resistance to that because it's a higher risk. I personally called CalHFA, one of the biggest down payment systems in the country. They said, we're open. We're more than happy to do CalHFA loans. However, they have cooperation with 15 top brokers on their site, and those brokers go to lenders who will fund those loans. And those lenders are saying, wait a minute, until we're sure the government won't give them permission to not pay us for 12 months, we're going to back off on that. So, do we have a back off on down payment assistance programs? Yes. Have there been some lenders who cannot afford now to fund FHA loans? Yes. But are they funding? Yes. I have one that's due to close on next week Wednesday. We got their interest rate down from 4.5% to 3.125%. We did credit cleanup in escrow. It's happening right now. Loan docs are issued, and they're going to fund that loan in 3.125%. That's a fact. It is a fact that FHA loans still are funding. But is the credit requirement a little tougher? Yes. Do you have to be sure that you're working? Yes. But is FHA lending going away? Is the Department of Housing and Urban Development just going to run to the hills? No. That is a gross exaggeration. Now, I want to share about something else. I want to look at the underlying... Oh, let me say one other thing about lending. So there's something called non-QM. So non-QM is people who do not qualify based on the normal criteria specified by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So that's stated income, bank statement loans, back to those really squirrely subprime loans from years ago. Now, those have disappeared for obvious reasons because 22 million people were just laid off. Many of those people will come back. As soon as those businesses that you drive by going, I want a taco, I want to get my nails done, I want to get my hair done, I want to go to the spa. All those places are going to reopen. The minute they reopen, what are they going to do? They got to hire the people back. Otherwise, they can't generate money. And the owners of that business don't have money for their kids. Therefore, they have to reopen. Therefore, they have to rehire the people. This is entirely different to an economic collapse where you have bankrupt banks, and bankrupt banks have no capital. Therefore, they cannot fund business. And therefore, you have a collapse in the economy. We do not have that. We do not have bankrupt banks. In fact, they're saying we're going to restrict our lending because we don't want to be bankrupt. That's the whole point. It's to stop a massive depression. That is what is happening in our economy. And there are people, for political reasons or social media reasons, are exploiting that and creating this mood of disaster. I want to say something else. The underlying factors in our economy are entirely different to 2008. In 2008, an enormous part of the economy was that massive real estate growth, and the vast majority of those loans in that real estate growth were based on people who did not qualify, who did stated income and didn't really have jobs, didn't even have to verify their tax returns, had low credit, and had zero money down. And the loans were not fixed. That is the reverse of what we have now. You have to prove your income. The IRS has to verify your tax returns. You have to have a higher FICO score. You must be employed, and the interest rate is fixed. Therefore, our underlying housing economy is more stable than it has been in many, many years. Because why would Rachel or Tommy say to their spouse or their kids, hey, we're just going to stop paying and we're going to end up living on the street because our payment is crazy? No, because they're going to have to rent a house, and the house they rent is going to cost as much, if not more, as the mortgage that they're paying right now because it's fixed. Whereas in 2007-8, I spoke to a mortgage broker this morning. I did 125 loans with him in 1 year. And he said, Andy, it is an entirely different scenario right now because of the fact that the majority of the loans are not subprime loans. Therefore, the pillars supporting the housing market are much more solid than they were. The banks had a liquidity issue back in 2006 and 2007. They simply didn't have cash. And the properties had gone up so high, you suddenly had several million people in the country at one time have 5 properties, 4 properties, 3 properties they did not qualify for. They qualified at 2% and they went to 8% in 2 years. And how do you go up 6% on 4 homes when you lied about your job in the first place? So it is an entirely different situation. We have millions of Americans who can qualify to buy a home, who can get now 3% down loans, they can get 5% down loans. They're going to have to prove that they're stable. They're going to have to prove that they're back to work. But the underlying pillars of the economy, the housing economy, are strong. Another issue, supply and demand. Supply is still way below demand. So these are many factors that do not point to collapse. So it's our job now to learn what lenders can fund loans. What are the requirements of those lenders? Don't call them bad people for saying that they want a more strict qualifying procedure. They want to be sure we don't have a depression. And if they just go, oh, whatever, anybody can buy, guess what? All those people will stop paying and we will have a depression. So they're protecting us, the contrary of what is being said on the media. They are protecting us against collapse, saying, let's be careful to whom we lend. Having said that, even if we lost 20% of buyers, which will not happen, even if we lost 20% of buyers, we've been dealing over and over again. This last weekend, there was a home that I sold, 4 offers in a week. I'm closing a deal this week on Wednesday, a $600,000 deal. 5 offers in 1 weekend, and this all happened during COVID. Buyers are out there. You know why? Because men love women, and women love men, and men who love women make children with the women, and those children need a place to live. And no man of a respectable reputation will say, yeah, man, I'm just going to stop paying everything. I'm going to pay rent. The banks suck. And my children, no. Your children don't have the choice. You have the choice. So if your child loses 5, 6, 7 years of you earning money because you're mad at the banks, you know who's losing? Your child is losing. And I believe Americans will see that, and I believe Americans will go back to work. All the curves on COVID are dropping, even though people go, oh, they could be even worse. Look, last thing on this, on this disposition, and I'll stop. Understand, all the people making a decision that you and I should not work have guaranteed income. Guaranteed salaries, guaranteed retirements, guaranteed health care. Everything is guaranteed. They don't lose a nickel. They don't lose a second. And so they stand there and go, oh no, you shouldn't work. They go back to $1 million homes, $2 million homes. They go back to their 30-year retirement policies. They go back to all of this comfort. They go back to their health care and they make a decision that you and I can't work. That also is unfortunately an error in our society. The people who are making the decisions, they don't have to worry about their jobs. They don't have to worry about their teeth. They don't have to worry about their health. They don't have to worry about their retirement accounts. And they're making decisions for us. And what will happen is, and what is happening, as you turn on even CNN, as liberal as it is, you turn on, this morning I was watching, teachers' unions are upset. They're upset because teachers are going, children are not going to grow up the same way. We're worried about children. The alcoholic and drug abuse folks, they're upset. They're saying people need to be able to get out in the public again. The trades unions, they're upset because their workers soon aren't going to be able to pay their bills. So there's enormous pressure, and what that pressure will achieve will be the reestablishing and the reoperating of the United States economy. That is coming. And as real estate agents and as real estate brokers, it's your job and mine to be ready to interact with those people. And that's what we're going to discuss for the rest of this evening. So we're going to leave now. Those of you on the YouTube video, please click subscribe, and we'd really appreciate your comments and likes. Thank you so much for watching, and believe in America, believe in going forward. We're going to make this thing turn around. Thank you so much for watching.